More than 50 years ago, the legend of Bigfoot was born.
Since then, a mysterious, hairy, half-man, half-beast has been reported in many different parts of the world.
Across the world, from the Himalayas to the back roads of New Mexico and back to Alaska, people are encountering something ancient, something towering, something unexplainable. Witnesses don't want fame. Researchers don't always find answers. But the footage, the footprints, and the fear, they all tell the same story. In this documentary, we revisit 6 of the most chilling Bigfoot encounters ever recorded. These stories aren't stitched from folklore or passed around campfires. They're backed by real footage, real evidence, and real people who walked away forever changed. These are sightings that left scars, shook communities, and still keep investigators awake at night. And after watching this, they might just keep you awake too. Deep in the American wilderness, where rolling mountains give way to thick green valleys and sloped canopies of vine-choked trees, the search for Bigfoot continues. This time, the investigation comes from the YouTube channel DMAX UK, and the terrain is as punishing as it is promising. The expedition is led by survivalist and Bigfoot expert Russell Acord, a man with years of tracking experience and a belief that something is moving through these forests that doesn't belong on any biological record. Russell has chosen a high-altitude valley covered in thick layers of kudzu, a fast-growing plant that strangles the landscape like a living blanket. At first glance, it appears uninhabitable, but beneath that thick green tangle lies a hidden world. Elk, deer, predators, an entire sub-ecosystem moving undetected under the cover of leaves and shadow. And maybe something else.
I would imagine is the exact same way Bigfoot would conduct business. They take the high ground because tactically, that is the place you want to be in any given situation.
Man, this is perfect. Look at this whole panoramic view. You see that old trail over there? How all grown over that is? If you look down into this valley, there's a plant called kudzu.
Kudzu, known as the vine that ate the South.
For this reason, Russell turns to thermal imaging, one of the few tools capable of piercing the darkness and green. With thermal cameras, even the faintest hint of heat or movement can be traced. And in terrain like this, that's not just helpful, it's essential.
Background temperature will show up on my thermals. I have to be quiet and not draw any attention to myself. I don't need anything on these other hillsides to know that I'm here. This is where we wait.
As Russell keeps watch over the possible Bigfoot feeding ground.
Meanwhile, 17 kilometers east in the small town of Benham, another part of the team is working from a different angle. Bryce Johnson, producer and researcher, has received a lead from a local. A man who claims that just outside town, there's a stretch of highway known for something strange, a regular crossing point for something large, something upright. Over the years, multiple residents have reported sightings of a dark, hulking figure darting across the 2-lane road late at night. Most dismiss it as a bear or shadow. But one piece of evidence stands out.
17 miles away, in the small town of Benham, Bryce Johnson waits to follow up on a lead he received from a local.
I'm waiting for a gentleman to pick me up. His name is Duncan. He contacted me yesterday and told me that he knows a spot where Bigfoots are frequently known to cross the highway. Now, believe it or not, this is not an uncommon pattern. Hundreds of eyewitnesses have reported seeing Bigfoot as they cross the road.
Something upright. Over the years, multiple residents have reported sightings of a dark, hulking figure darting across the 2-lane road late at night. Most dismiss it as a bear or shadow. But one piece of evidence stands out. A police dashcam video, brief but unforgettable, shows a large, dark figure crossing the highway in a slow, deliberate stride. At first glance, it appears bear-like. But then, it becomes clear. It's on 2 legs.
The footage shows a large, dark, bipedal creature crossing a remote highway in rural Georgia.
What the crap?
What was that?
Did you see that?
Yes.
That looked like a bear, but it was running on 2 feet. Oh my goodness.
Back in the forest, night falls fast. Russell and his team scan the dense valley, their monitors glowing softly in the dark. At first, there's little to report, just a few elk moving through the underbrush. Nothing out of the ordinary. But then, something strange. A heat signature, upright, moving fast, then slowing. Russell leans closer, squinting at the monitor. It doesn't match the elk. It's not a bear. The body shape is different. The stride is different. It's smooth, almost cautious. Then just as suddenly as it appeared, the figure is gone. Russell is looking at the screen, trying to understand what they are witnessing. The creature had been tracking 2 deer, but stopped. Something halted its pursuit, and then it just vanished, as if it knew it was being watched. The team is rattled, but focused. Whatever it wasn't normal, and it wasn't far.
Animals moving around. This thermal is really a great way to canvas a very large area and be able to see if there's anything that stands out. Thermal gives a really good hot heat trace.
Across the valley, Bryce and his local contact continue driving along the road near Benham. In the passenger seat, Bryce holds a high-definition thermal camera, scanning the tree lines with trained patience. And then, there it is. Roughly 200 yards away, a tall, warm silhouette registers on the thermal display. They stop the car. Silence. Bryce doesn't say anything for several seconds. He just stares at the figure on screen.
And you're able to find it right away. Okay, if you look over on this other hillside, there's a couple elk. I'll go ahead and get a little closer. Watch this. That's a big bull. These hills are completely alive with wildlife. We've been at this for a couple hours, and so far it's just the elk. I'm not seeing much activity in the bottom of this ravine at all.
It's not moving like a human, but it's there. Hovering near the road's edge, almost exactly where the dash cam footage was recorded. For a moment it doesn't move. Then, it's gone. They sweep the road, lights on high. The thermal picks up nothing. It had either ducked into the forest or disappeared entirely. What's haunting about these dual encounters isn't just what was seen. It's how intelligently these creatures move. They don't crash through the brush. They don't panic. They seem to know how to stay just far enough away, just out of reach. Both Russell and Bryce would later agree. The footage is inconclusive, but highly suspect. The shape, the stride, the heat signature, all align with previous encounters.
Our target zone is really just based off of processing the data from our algorithm. And Duncan has pointed us to a Bigfoot hotspot well within our target zone. That just tells me that our algorithm works, and we have a great chance for spotting Bigfoot.
And what's even more disturbing, they're not alone. From the dashcam footage to real-time thermal sightings, it appears there may be more than one creature in the area, moving between mountain and highway, stalking the deer below, watching the roads above, and knowing exactly when to vanish. In the long, tangled history of Bigfoot encounters, some stories refuse to fade. Not because they're the most dramatic or the most violent, but because they come from voices the world didn't expect to hear. Logical voices, measured ones, voices that weren't chasing myths, and yet stumbled into something they'll never forget. The first of these stories takes us back nearly 70 years. October 1955, near the Tet Zone cache in British Columbia. A Canadian highway worker named William Rowe had ventured into the forest alone, scouting a site for a future hunting trip. He was a practical man, a trained observer, comfortable in the wild, and not one to spook easily.
In October of 1955, near Tet Zone Cache, British Columbia, a highway worker went to scout out an area for a future hunt. That worker was named William Rowe, and his story is considered a classic in Bigfoot history. as he tells it. I had just come out of a patch of low brush into a clearing when I saw what I thought was a grizzly bear.
As he moved through the underbrush, the trail opened into a small clearing. It was there, between shadow and silence, that he saw movement. His first thought was a bear, a grizzly perhaps by the size and shape, but then it stepped forward into full view, and what he saw was no bear. My first impression was of a man, Rowe would later recall, but it was very huge, 6 feet tall, almost 3 feet wide, and probably weighing near 300 pounds. It looked heavy.
A moment later it raised up and stepped out into the opening. Then I saw it was no bear. My first impression was of a huge man about 6 feet tall, almost 3 feet wide, and probably weighing somewhere near 300 pounds.
The creature was covered head to toe in dark brown fur. But what stopped him cold wasn't the size or the posture. It was the realization that the creature was female. He saw the outline of breasts, clearly defined under the fur. The creature moved like a person, upright, balanced, no slouching, no lumbering. As it walked closer, Rowe didn't dare move, didn't breathe. He watched, frozen, as the unknown thing slowly made its way past the clearing. Then it stopped. It turned, and through a narrow break in the brush, it looked right at him. Rowe described the expression as one of pure amazement, as if the creature had been just as surprised to see him as he was to see it. It straightened up to its full height, he said, and began to walk rapidly away, back to where it had come. It was gone. William Rowe never forgot that day. He hadn't believed in Bigfoot, hadn't thought the creature could possibly be real. But after what he saw, he didn't know what else to call it. "What was it?" he later asked in an official affidavit. "It will be a mystery to me unless another one is found."
For it looked directly at me through an opening in the brush. A look of amazement crossed its face. It backed up 3 or 4 short steps, then straightened up to its full height and started to walk rapidly back the way it had come. For a moment it watched me over its shoulder as it went, not exactly afraid, but as though it wanted no contact with anything strange. Whether this was a Sasquatch, I do not know.
His statement would go on to become one of the cornerstone sightings in Bigfoot research. Credible, specific, and most importantly, free from sensationalism. He didn't want attention. He didn't publish a book. He just wanted to tell the truth.
It will always remain a mystery to me unless another one is found. Signed, William Rowe.
And his wasn't the only story. Thousands of miles away and decades later, a different kind of man would have his own close brush with the unknown. Scott Barta, a co-founder of SIR, Sasquatch Investigations and Research, and one of the early researchers behind modern Bigfoot expeditions, was known for his logic and calm presence in the field. But even he had a moment that left him uncertain. It was a quiet night on a research campout. Barta was sleeping alone in a 6-foot-tall tent, tucked in a clearing far from the nearest road. No storms, no noise, just the usual nighttime hum of the forest. Around 4 a.m., he woke up, suddenly. No dream, no sound, just a gut instinct. Unable to fall back asleep, he stepped out for a short walk behind the tent. The moon was bright enough to cast shadows, and that's when he saw it, a figure. At first he assumed it was a pine tree, tall, wide, unmoving. A trick of the moonlight, maybe.
Was this mysterious, vicious creature a Bigfoot? Only Bauman's fallen partner will ever know. Scott Barta is an author and member of the Sasquatch Investigations of the Rockies, or SIR.
But then something gnawed at him, a feeling. Something was wrong. He stood there staring at the dark shape. It didn't move. It didn't flinch. But something in his gut told him that wasn't a tree. Eventually, dismissing it as a shadow and sleep haze, Barta returned to his tent and went back to bed. When morning came, he walked back to the same spot, just to satisfy his own doubt. And what he saw shook him to the core. There was no tree, not even a stump. The spot where the figure had stood was empty. Just bare ground and sky. Whatever he saw had been watching him. He's never claimed it was definitely Bigfoot, but he's never been able to explain it either.
I just went back to bed. And then the next morning I got up to go look and see what tree it was that had to have made that shadow. I couldn't find one. And I found the ground was mashed down and there was a huge kind of print. It wasn't a real discernible print, but it was definitely a giant print, like over 17 inches.
These are the kinds of stories that stay with you, not because they're loud, but because they're quiet, personal, uneasy. Stories told by people with nothing to gain. People who never wanted to believe, but saw something that wouldn't let them forget. Two men, two moments, two shadows on the edge of what we think we know, and two more reasons why this mystery refuses to go away. For over 50 years, the legend of Bigfoot has crept through the margins of news reports, folk stories, and personal testimonies, appearing suddenly, vanishing just as fast. But while most sightings are confined to forests of the Pacific Northwest, this next haunting encounter brings the mystery into the heart of the American Southwest. In a report filed by KRQE News 13, veteran anchors, Dick Knipfing and Diane Anderson broke a strange and compelling story out of New Mexico, a land more known for deserts and mesas than for towering hairy creatures. But the people here had seen something, and they weren't staying silent.
More than 50 years ago, the legend of Bigfoot was born.
Since then, a mysterious, hairy, half-man, half-beast has been reported in many different parts of the world.
One of the witnesses was a local resident named Jimmy Hasso. He's not a man prone to fantasy or exaggeration. Yet what he saw while driving near the San Juan River in Farmington, New Mexico, left him shaken. I couldn't believe that my eyes had actually seen it. Jimmy's sighting soon attracted the attention of one of the most recognizable names in cryptid investigation, Tom Biscardi. A self-described Bigfoot tracker for over 35 years, Biscardi has followed trails across the United States, collecting plaster casts of footprints, thermal footage, and even claiming to possess a mysterious hand that he says was DNA tested and found to be from a creature totally unknown.
I couldn't believe that my eyes had actually seen that, It's amazing.
Jimmy Hasso is recounting his story to Tom Biscardi, a Bigfoot hunter who has been on the creature's trail for 35 years.
Now, Biscardi and his team were on the case. Their investigation followed the San Juan River deep into tribal lands, through the Ashihi Navajo Reservation, and up into the Lucachucay mountain range, which straddles the border between New Mexico and Arizona. The terrain was vast, wild, and full of shadows.
Two teams on foot, each side of the bank.
We followed Biscardi in his trek all over the Four Corners, where there have been dozens of alleged Bigfoot sightings since 1998.
One of Biscardi's own team members claimed to have had a personal encounter in the region. While tracking above the tree line near the Chuca Peaks, they discovered something. Massive tracks, clear, defined, and deeply pressed into the earth. To the team, this wasn't random. This was a pattern. With its abundance of shelter, food, and seclusion, the San Juan River corridor may very well be a natural habitat for something unknown.
Look what we got here.
There's another one up here.
There's one right there. On a scale of 1 to 10, the team rates these prints an 8.
What are you at right now?
They set up infrared trail cameras, each one equipped with night vision, carefully positioned across likely paths. Because if Bigfoot is anything, Biscardi argues, it's nocturnal. While most of the local investigation centered in New Mexico, one of the team's most intriguing pieces of footage actually came from Texas, a known Bigfoot hotspot. In a clip shot just before dawn, a dark figure appears far in the distance, first darting across the frame, then vanishing behind a ridge. Moments later, it reappears, running left to right and crashing through brush. One tree even seems to snap. It's not proof, but it's not easy to explain either. Despite all the surveillance, That night in Farmington yielded no definitive evidence, just false alarms, branches, wind, faint heat signatures.
They set up infrared cameras equipped with night vision because they believe Bigfoot is nocturnal. And this footage shot in Paris, Texas, an alleged major Bigfoot hotspot, shows what Biscardi believes is a creature.
But something about Jimmy's sighting, the tracks in the Chusca Mountains, and the footage in Texas makes the story hard to dismiss. Because sometimes it's not what you catch on camera that stays with you. It's what you almost caught, and what's still out there, watching, from just beyond the headlights. High above the clouds, where the air is thin, and the landscape is carved from ancient rock and snow, one of the oldest cryptid legends still lingers in the minds of those who live among the peaks. Known to the Western world as the Abominable Snowman, but to the people of Nepal, simply as the Yeti. In this rare journey, the team from Animal Planet's Finding Bigfoot leaves the comfort of the Western Hemisphere and travels across the globe to Nepal, deep into the Himalayas, to track the elusive creature that has haunted tales for centuries. Their destination? The remote Pangboche Monastery, tucked into the foothills of Mount Everest. This ancient temple is more than a cultural landmark. For decades, it has housed two items of profound mystery: a scalp and hand, said to have once belonged to a Yeti. Though debated and controversial, these relics have been a focal point of Yeti lore for over half a century. Climbers, monks, and researchers alike have come to witness them, each leaving with more questions than answers. But for the team, this journey isn't just about relics in glass boxes. It's about voices, eyewitnesses, who've lived alongside the mountains for generations, and many of them, quietly and without fanfare, have their own encounters to share.
We've come to Nepal and ventured nearly 14,000 feet up into the Himalayan mountains in search of the infamous Abominable Snowman. After a failed night investigation, we decided to reach out to a nearby village for help.
In a nearby mountain village, the team organizes a gathering. The people arrive slowly, men wrapped in wool, children peeking around corners, elders with deeply lined faces that speak of a life shaped by wind and stone. And then the stories begin.
We decided to reach out to a nearby village for help. Mostly, we heard things we've come to expect from our adventures looking for Bigfoots.
A local tracker, a soft-spoken man who's spent his entire life navigating these ridgelines, shares his account. Months ago, he had ventured beyond his usual trail, scouting a new route along a glacial path rarely traveled. The sun was high, reflecting off the snow like fire, when he came upon a small pond nestled between two rock faces. What he saw next stopped him in his tracks. Across the water, crouched low, was a large, hair-covered creature, tall and wide, with long arms and thick, matted fur. It didn't run. It didn't seem afraid. It was busy, reaching into the pond and eating frogs. The tracker stood still, not daring to make a sound. It was only when the creature turned its head, its flat face partially visible in profile, that the tracker was certain. This was no bear, no monkey, nothing known to the region. He quietly backed away and returned to the village, shaken. The team asked him carefully about what he saw, the details of the face, the hands, the eyes. His descriptions matched dozens of other reports from around the region. Same proportions, same behavior, same unsettling calm. He described the creature's nose and fur and head, its build as like a strong man, but heavier.
Can you point and show where it is?
Yeah.
Right in that small opening between the trees? You know, at this distance, you'd be able to see some features. Could you ask him?
Inspired by the story, the team pushes further into the mountains, following his route, scanning the area for tracks, signs, and movement. The altitude takes its toll, but the search continues, layer by layer, step by step. Because even here, at the highest point on Earth, the mystery only grows deeper. What was once dismissed as Himalayan folklore is beginning to echo the same pattern reported by eyewitnesses all over the world. Large, bipedal beings, covered in hair. Human-like, but not human. And as the team leaves the monastery behind and steps deeper into the wilderness, one question lingers in the air like mountain mist. What if the Yeti was never a myth to begin with?
This is going to be awesome. I got a really great guide. I got Lakpa, the Sherpa. He grew up in this valley, and he said he could take me to a lake where his ancestors, all his relatives, since he's a little kid, have told him, Yeti lives at this lake, and he'll take me there to camp.
At the southernmost tip of Alaska's Kenai Peninsula, hidden between rugged mountains and the icy waters of the Pacific, there lies a place that time and humanity has seemingly abandoned. Port Chatham, once known as Portlock, was a thriving cannery town in the early 1900s. Back then, it was alive with the rhythm of work. Fishing boats docked and departed, logs were hauled down from the hills, and smoke rose from cannery stacks. The town had a post office, a general store, a school, everything a small coastal community needed to survive. But by the 1950s, it was gone. Not burned, not buried, just left behind. Today, only the forest remains, swallowing what's left of wooden buildings and rusted docks. But why did everyone leave? What terrified an entire population enough to abandon their homes forever? According to local Alutiiq oral history, the answer is a creature known only as Nantiinak. Described as a towering half-man, half-beast figure, Nantiinak was no myth to the people of Port Chatham. It was a real presence, a hunter of humans. For decades, stories emerged of people vanishing into the woods, never returning. Bodies found mutilated in ways no bear could manage. Trees torn from the ground by their roots. Campsites torn apart under the cover of night.
The valley that we're looking at was logged in the early 90s. The trees were reported inverted back in the 1940s.
In 1905, workers at a nearby mining camp reportedly fled en masse, refusing to return. Some came back a year later, most didn't. In the 1940s, the violence only escalated. Hunters disappeared. Loggers were found dead. One case stood out. A man found struck from behind with such force that bones shattered. There were no animals in the area, no human footprints but his own. This story, and others like it, caught the attention of researchers, including Dr. J. Robert Alley, author and Bigfoot investigator, who spent years studying the case. He noted the patterns of mysterious and disturbing deaths, many of which had no plausible explanation, as several locals swore they heard screams in the night, and others claimed they saw a large upright creature near the edges of town, always watching, never approaching. By the time the 1950s arrived, the people had had enough. They didn't hold a vote. They didn't wait for outside help. They just left. Families packed their belongings and vanished from the region, never to return. And Port Chatham slowly became a ghost town. While some skeptics believe the town's abandonment was due to economic collapse or the development of a new highway system, the people who lived there, those whose families were directly affected, tell a different story. For them, Port Chatham wasn't just inconvenient, it was haunted. Even today, very few dare to go near it. Those who do speak of an oppressive silence, a heavy presence, and in some cases, new sightings of tall, dark figures moving through the trees. There are no hotels, no guided tours, no souvenir stands, just rain, forest, and silence. Many believe Nantiinak still roams the region, untouched by modern man, hidden in the vast Alaskan wilderness. A predator, a relic, a reminder that not all wilderness is empty. Some mysteries grow weaker with time, but in Port Chatham, the legend only grows stronger, because when a whole town chooses fear over home, it leaves a question that refuses to die. What exactly was waiting in those woods? What kind of creature willingly dives into alligator-infested waters, only to vanish without a trace? And what if it wasn't human, not a bear, but something we're not supposed to believe exists? It was a quiet January afternoon in the Florida swamplands. The stillness of Lettuce Lake Park, a 240-acre stretch of dense wetland northeast of Tampa, was broken only by the paddle strokes of a lone canoeist. Matt, the man behind the camera, wasn't expecting anything unusual that day. He was drifting slowly through backwater channels, his eyes watching for birds, maybe a few deer, but what he found left him shaken. A dark figure appears along the bank. It seems upright, vaguely bear-like. But the more it moves, the more that theory falls apart. The arms swing too long, the stride too deliberate. It wades through waist-deep swamp like a trained swimmer, undeterred by the thick roots and silt-heavy waters. Matt did what anyone with a pulse and a phone would do. He started filming. He assumed at first it was a bear, perhaps disoriented or desperate. But Lettuce Lake isn't known for bears. In fact, park rangers had warned that bears avoid the area entirely, likely due to the high population of gators and venomous snakes. If it was a human, it wasn't acting like one. And if it wasn't a bear, the question gets more complicated. Matt emailed his footage to the Bigfoot Evidence YouTube channel, the long-standing archive for strange sightings across North America. The video, which arrived on January 15, 2015, was published just days later, an unedited, raw glimpse into something no one can explain. What strikes most viewers isn't just the form of the creature, but its behavior. It doesn't hesitate. It moves through the swamp like it belongs there. Watch yourself. The figure looks up, not directly at the camera, but towards something in the direction of Matt's canoe. Then, without warning, it begins to drift into deeper water. It lowers itself, gradually submerging until its entire body disappears below the surface. There's no splashing, no panic, just a calculated descent, until nothing remains but ripple trails in the dark green water. Matt paddled forward, cautiously, but the creature was gone. There were no bubbles, no shape underwater, no sign of where it went. And this wasn't a wide lake with hiding spots. This was a tight, shallow, gator-infested corner of the swamp, a place where nothing dives unless it knows exactly what it's doing. Skeptics were quick to offer explanations. A man in a suit, a lost animal, a trick of light. But Matt's concern was genuine. In his email, he emphasized that no sane person would voluntarily walk and dive through that part of the swamp. Not with the risk of 12-foot alligators lurking underfoot, or water moccasins curled beneath the reeds. The footage slows slightly. You can see the texture of the creature's arms as it emerges from the thick brush. There's no fur matting like a bear, no reflective gear like a human diver, just long, matte dark limbs, moving with heavy grace. The proportions don't fit any known species in the region, and no zoo or wildlife authority ever reported anything loose in the area. Was it the fabled skunk ape of Florida lore? Or something else? Something undocumented? The swamp holds its secrets close. This encounter, sent not by a hunter but a casual witness with no agenda, forces us to reconsider what might still roam America's wild pockets. Not everything leaves tracks. Not everything makes a sound. But once you see something like this, you don't forget it. Matt's final words linger. Certainly can't explain it myself. If you believe something unknown still calls the Florida wilderness home, or if you've seen anything like this with your own eyes, Let us know in the comments. Subscribe to Bigfoot Evidence for real footage, real witnesses, and real questions that demand answers. Because out there in the forgotten corners of the swamp, legends don't stay buried. They walk, swim, and disappear. It begins with stillness, the kind of quiet only deep forest roads can hold. No distant engines, no human presence. Just the soft rustle of trees and the rhythmic hum of wind pressing through pine. A man stands far outside the tree line, recording a seemingly uneventful forest scene. He doesn't know it yet, but his lens has captured something extraordinary. Something upright, something black, and completely unaware it's being watched. At first it appears as just another trunk, dark, motionless, but something about it draws the eye. The proportions are off, wider at the top, tapering into a distinct shoulder line. It doesn't sway with the wind. It doesn't blend completely with the tree bark. And then the realization hits. It's not a tree at all. Watch yourself there, behind a curtain of pine and brush. A black, upright figure stands, no movement, no acknowledgement. As if carved into the forest itself. But the contours are too defined. The head, shaped with a subtle slope. The torso, broad and uniform. And most chilling of all, the arms hanging unnaturally long at its sides. The footage, uploaded by the channel Bigfoot's Testimony, carries no commentary, no dramatization, just raw documentation. And in its simplicity lies the weight of truth. The witness never enters the forest. He never calls out. Whether from instinct or awe, he simply films, and lets the evidence speak for itself. The creature doesn't react. It remains fixed behind the thickest part of the tree cover, its posture eerily neutral. Most encounters, if they're even real, feature a fleeing subject, startled by human presence. But not this one. This creature, whatever it is, doesn't know it's being watched. That's what makes this sighting different. And that's what makes it terrifying. Zoomed in, the silhouette becomes undeniable. No fur texture is visible at this range, but the shape is unmistakable. Bipedal, dense, and tall. Its head doesn't move. Neither does the body. It's not reacting because it doesn't know. It's simply existing in the moment, perfectly still, camouflaged in plain sight. There's something about the footage that lingers. Perhaps it's the contrast between distance and proximity. From where the man is standing, the forest is serene. But just beyond the first few rows of trees, something primeval watches the woods. Or perhaps guards them. Texas, the Pacific Northwest, Appalachia, each region has its share of reports. But it's these fleeting, accidental glimpses that grip the public imagination. Not stories told around fires or blurry trail cams. It's the unintentional captures, the chance alignments between human and unknown, that keep the search alive. The figure eventually shifts, subtly. Not enough to catch if you're not looking, but the foliage near its side seems to compress. The arm, perhaps, pressing against branches as the body leans or slightly repositions. And then, just as fast, it stills once more. The shape softens into the forest shadows as the camera pulls back. A moment frozen, 1,000 questions raised, and not one answered. So what stood behind those trees that day? So still, so unaware, and so deeply camouflaged within its element? Could it be the legendary Bigfoot, observing in silence? Or was it something else entirely? Something native to the forest, but foreign to us. Before you decide, watch again. Look beyond the obvious. Follow the shadows. The truth, as always, is in the stillness. Share your thoughts below, and if you believe in revealing what lies beyond the trail, subscribe and stay with us, because the forest doesn't always keep its secrets. What you're about to see might be one of the most unsettling and unfiltered encounters ever uploaded to YouTube. The video comes from a woman named Nanea, an experienced turkey hunter who was out in the woods, doing what she's done countless times before. But this time, the forest had something waiting for her. She didn't go out looking for a mystery. She didn't expect anything unusual, but what she captured, accidentally, has shocked even the most hardened cryptid researchers. The footage opens with a close-up of Nanea's face. She's whispering into the camera, barely able to keep her voice steady. I don't know what I just saw, she whispers. I'm so startled right now. Her eyes dart towards something just off screen. She slowly turns the camera. At first it's shaky, nervous hands in a terrifying moment, but then it stabilizes, and that's when we see it. Two massive upright figures moving between the trees.
Yes, I was out here hunting, and I'm so startled right now. I think I may have stumbled across a Bigfoot. I'm just not sure. Here, let's see if you guys can tell.
They're dark, hulking, and disturbingly human in shape, but too big, too wide, too tall. One of them is dragging something along the ground, something limp, something that looks, eerily, like a deer. Nanea believes it was. She believes, I think I saw a Bigfoot carrying a deer it had killed, and I still don't know how I made it out of there alive. The creature's arms are massive, long and swinging. The way it moves isn't like a bear or anything else that belongs in those woods. These things were upright, coordinated, quiet. Then, one of them slows down. It turns, as if it saw her. There's a sharp intake of breath. The camera jolts, and then, cut to black. Just like that. It's over. Nanea never got closer. She didn't wait to see what would happen next. She backed out of the woods, heart pounding, and uploaded the footage days later, once she could process what she'd seen. Now the question shifts to you. Out there, alone, no help, two towering creatures, one of them dragging a fresh... What would you do?
I'm so startled right now. I'm so startled. Yeah, it looks like there's two Bigfoots. I don't know. It looks like he's got a dead deer in his arm or something. I'm not sure. Oh my God, I think he sees me. I have to go.
October 26, 2022. A regular day for two friends out exploring near Silver Point, until something unnatural crossed their path. The footage you're about to see was captured by Clay Shiner and his friend on his property. What started off as a simple hike turned into something they'd never forget. The video begins without warning. Right there, center frame, is a massive upright figure. It's hard to make out at first. The fog wraps around the trees like a veil, muting every detail. But look closer. Something is moving. Slow, deliberate, heavy.
Do you see that? Do you see that? I'm afraid.
The creature is bipedal. Its arms hang long, and it carefully grips the tree trunks as it makes its way through the tree line. Each step is placed with intention, as if it knows it's being watched. Clay's voice breaks the silence from behind the camera. Do you see that? He whispers, voice trembling. I'm afraid. You can hear the uncertainty. They didn't go looking for Bigfoot. but they may have found it. The figure lumbers forward, moving almost like it's injured, or simply cautious, grabbing trees for balance or cover.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
It never turns its head, never looks toward the camera, but its size and posture make one thing clear. This isn't a bear, and it's not human. Despite being only a few hundred feet away, the thick haze makes the entire moment feel dreamlike, unreal, like something you weren't meant to see. Clay and his friend stay low, silent, in shock. The camera never cuts, just a steady, tense shot of something that has no business being there. Was it watching them too, or was it just passing through? We may never know for sure, but what Clay captured that day is a chilling reminder. Sometimes we stumble upon things in the wild, things we were never meant to see. What exactly was that creature dragging through the snow? Was it a fresh kill, a rival, or something far more sinister? We may never truly know, but one thing is certain. It wasn't human, and it wasn't supposed to be seen. Encounters like these raise more questions than answers. Why do so many sightings happen in isolated, fog-covered terrain? Why are they always fleeting, always just out of reach? Are these creatures watching us more often than we think, hiding in plain sight just beyond the tree line? As always, we'll let you decide. Re-watch the footage, slow it down, look closely. The devil is in the details, and so might be the truth. If you've had a strange encounter or caught something on camera you can't explain, send it our way. Your clip could be featured in an upcoming episode. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next unexplained moment caught on film. Because out there, in the snow, the fog, the silence, something is moving, watching, waiting. We'll see you next time, right here, where the unknown is always one frame away. It was meant to track a different predator. In the remote wilderness of Alberta, Canada, a trail camera was quietly placed, programmed to study the movement and behavior of wolverines, agile, elusive, and rarely seen. But what it caught instead was something no wildlife researcher expected. 105 seconds of footage. A single moment of the unexplainable. Preserved by lens and chance, the video begins in silence. The forest is thick, quiet, and unmoving. Nothing stirs except the swaying of distant branches. Then, with near imperceptible motion, a massive figure begins to take shape from the landscape itself. Camouflaged against the trunk of a pine, it had been standing completely still, its hair blending perfectly with bark, its posture rigid, calculating. This is not mistaken identity. This is deliberate concealment. Watch yourself. It steps forward cautiously. The body is fully upright. Its frame is broad and imposing, easily measuring between 6 and 7 feet in height. Muscles ripple beneath thick black hair as it moves across the forest floor with quiet purpose. It does not glance at the camera. Its eyes are focused elsewhere, likely prey. At that moment, the camera, designed for wolverines, accidentally captures a high-definition study in predation. What's most shocking isn't just the creature's appearance, it's the intelligence behind its behavior. This being was not simply passing through. I watched it, hidden in plain sight. Every motion, every breath seemed synchronized with the sway of the forest around it, as if it had learned through generations how to disappear without vanishing. Sonny Vator's video has since sparked serious interest among seasoned trackers and wildlife experts. The background matching technique displayed, intentional blending into the environment, is not a known behavior of any North American animal aside from humans. So the question remains, who or what adapts like this in the wild? And how many more trail cameras might hold secrets still buried in digital files, waiting for someone to look again? If you've ever set a trail cam and caught something you can't explain, now is the time. Come forward, tell your story. It began with a view of calm, the kind of stillness only a high mountain lake can offer. A lone hiker had set out that spring morning in Payson Canyon, Utah, capturing the quiet beauty of nature. The glint of water between the trees, the soft bend of branches swaying in the breeze. His camera drifted gently across the lake's surface, recording a moment of peace. But then, something shifted. The camera jolted, swinging away from the shoreline and toward the tree line. Something was there. In the blur of motion, what emerges is impossible to ignore. A tall, black figure standing upright among the pines. It does not flinch or flee. It simply stands, as if observing. Between 6 and 7 feet tall, covered in dark, heavy hair, it blends unnaturally well into the forest. The footage, zoomed and stabilized by the Paranormal Review, reveals what appears to be a creature unlike anything native to the region. The camera catches it mid-step, arms swinging low with weight, as if it had been caught just before vanishing deeper into the trees. The man who took this footage never meant for it to go public. He captured it in the spring of 2015 while hiking alone through Payson Canyon in central Utah. For years he kept the clip buried, afraid of ridicule or disbelief. It wasn't until nearly a decade later that he passed it on to the Paranormal Review, hoping someone else might see what he saw that day. Something not supposed to exist. In the early seconds, the camera pans nervously. There's no narration, no commentary, just the thud of stones tumbling and the wind in the trees. Then, stabilized and enhanced, the footage locks onto the shape. Towering between 6 and 7 feet tall, the creature stands with its back partially turned, its limbs long and its body blanketed in thick black hair. It appears to be moving with purpose, neither fleeing nor hiding, but roaming, almost patrolling. Watch yourself. Despite the digital improvements, the footage remains raw. The figure doesn't blur like a man in a costume. It shifts weight with natural heaviness. Its gait is grounded, deliberate. When it turns slightly, a subtle glint reveals a sunlit patch on its shoulder, showing depth and motion impossible to fake. Then, just as quickly as it appeared, it vanishes behind a patch of dense timber. The rocks have stopped falling. The silence returns. But what remains is a recording that continues to challenge the boundaries of belief. Springtime in Payson Canyon reveals much, But for one hiker, it revealed too much. If you've been holding on to footage, unsure of what to do with it, maybe now's the time. Share it. The forest doesn't lie, but silence might. High above the tree line, where the silence is as vast as the sky itself, two men found themselves alone on the slopes of Mount St. Helens. Their camera had been trained on the sweeping horizon, filming the wide-open volcanic terrain. But what they captured was not just geological beauty, it was something altogether unexplainable. From a distance, beyond the reach of ordinary hikers, a dark figure moved across the barren stretch. At first glance, it seemed out of place, too large, too fluid, and far too distinct against the ashen backdrop of the mountain. Despite the incredible distance, the form stood out sharply. Tall, broad, and cloaked in black, the silhouette appeared to be walking upright with long, deliberate strides. It had no gear, no tools, and no reason to be there. Watch closely. Uploaded by Bigfoot. Believers only, the video has become a quiet sensation among those who study the unexplained. The terrain where the figure walks is isolated and treacherous. No casual wanderer would venture there. And yet the way the figure navigates the uneven slope suggests confidence and familiarity. The men behind the camera remain silent, their disbelief louder than words. They zoom in shakily, and for a moment, the creature comes into sharper focus.
Hey, there's something down there. You see that in the clearing?
Oh, yeah.
See the stride. The scale is hard to process until one notices the trees and rock formations nearby. Only then does the size of the figure become clear. This being is massive, between 7 and 8 feet tall and still distinguishable from so far away. It seems to dominate the landscape, even at a distance. It moves for only a short time before slipping behind a rocky outcrop. Then it is gone. Mount St. Helens holds many secrets beneath its slopes. Some are geological, others historical, but a few like this remain rooted in mystery. If you've captured something unexplainable on camera, don't leave it buried. Share what you've seen. Let the mountain speak. Re-watch the final moments. It began on the 8th of July, 2012, deep within the Sierra Nevada wilderness, near the quiet settlement of Clipper Mills, California. Hidden between the thick trunks of pine and cedar, a sound rose that has haunted all who've heard it since. A sound not meant for human ears. What was captured that night is now known as the longest sustained Bigfoot vocalization ever recorded. It was raw, guttural, and stretched out in intervals no man or beast has ever matched. This was not just a cry, it was a declaration.
It's crazy.
Not a bear.
That's no dog.
It's a bear.
I think it's a bear.
Listen closely. Posted by the YouTube channel Big Toe Time, the audio was captured during a backwoods expedition. The recorder had been placed with the intent to monitor local wildlife. But what it caught that night was not bear, coyote, or mountain lion. It was something else, something intelligent, something alive with power. The screams continue, sometimes distant, then suddenly close, shaking the very leaves above the mic. Patterns begin to emerge, repetitions, a kind of rhythm that seems deliberate, not chaotic.
The dog's right over there. Whatever it is over there. There's a bunch of them. They're talking. They're just communicating.
That's not
Yeah, there's one back there too, like earlier.
Yeah, that's not a dog bark.
You can hear the dog barking amongst these howls.
As the minutes pass, the cries don't weaken. They intensify. There is pacing now. Movement. What began as isolated yells grows into an eerie performance of dominance or distress. At one point, two distinct vocalizations overlap, suggesting that more than one creature may have been present. And still not a single human voice can be heard. 15 minutes of edited audio, 20 minutes experienced live. Near the end, the vocalizations fade, not with exhaustion, but with an unsettling quiet. The forest falls still again. Whatever was out there had made its presence known, and then vanished into the tree line.
Shut up. Peanut, stay here. Penny, stop.
For the chilling final echo, if these are the cries of a creature not yet understood, then the Sierras may hold more than mere wildlife. They may hold witnesses to a hidden chapter of evolution, heard but still unseen. Are you listening? Are you ready to believe? Then don't just hear it, feel it. The truth may still be echoing. There are places where the wild flows too freely to be tamed, where the rivers carve their truth into the land, and something ancient watches from the shadows. Just beyond Calgary, Alberta, at the quiet edge of a riverbank, the impossible revealed itself one overcast afternoon. A casual walk turned to silence when movement in the distance caught the attention of two people filming for their channel, Fox RF600. What they captured in that brief moment became one of the most chilling Bigfoot clips recorded on Canadian soil. Before the camera was fully trained on the figure, it had already moved, taking just a few calculated steps, pausing, and then crouching low into the brush, as if it knew it was being watched.
That's not human. That's not a human.
See the moment it turns. The video is brief, but every frame tells more than words ever could. A bulky, dark shape against the pale earth, covered head to toe in thick black hair. What makes the encounter unforgettable is not just the figure's presence, but its motion. It looks back, not in panic, not in confusion, but in awareness, recognition.
It's here at first, but no. That is not a human.
Watch the eyes lock. One of the witnesses, barely whispering, can be heard saying, "That's not a human." And they're right. The proportions are off. The head too wide, the face undefined, yet far from expressionless. The way it crouches suggests it knows the river trail. It is not lost. It is not out of place. Then the forest reclaims it. The figure sinks into the natural camouflage, leaving no sound, no sign, only the digital trace of its presence.
That is not a human.
Witness the final disappearance. If real, what stood there at the river's edge was something far older than any trail map. Something that watches us from between the trees and knows exactly when to vanish. The question is not what it was, but who saw it. And the answer, caught forever on this recording, is simple. We all did. Are you ready to face what waits beyond the last bend in the river? 6 stories, 6 encounters, and 1,000 questions left unanswered. From thermal footage capturing something impossible on a remote American highway, to the ruins of a fishing village in Alaska where something stalked and killed without mercy, each moment leaves us with the same unsettling thought. If this creature is just a myth, why does it keep showing up? The people who've seen it didn't go looking for monsters. They were driving home, camping, working, living, just like you. But something found them anyway. Maybe Bigfoot isn't hiding from us. Maybe it's always been right there, just out of reach, just out of focus, waiting for the next story. And if these 6 were real, how many more have gone untold?